Neurocreatives podcast with Josh Crafford.
I think it's really humbling when I talk to companies and they haven't even thought about this. You share with them that they already have neurodivergent people in their organization. You are missing out on an enormous part of the population who has unique talents and strengths if you know how to include them and then how to support them. You've got people in your company right now who will vastly improve their commitment and their performance when they see from the top down that this becomes something the company understands because they're educating themselves, and then values. You really just unleash and amplify it. People who learn differently are the hardest working people I've ever met.
Welcome to the Neurocreatives podcast with your neurodivergent host, Josh Crafford. This is a positive podcast where we believe in no judgment of self and of others. We remove the societal stigmas of can't and don't by focusing on strengths, mental wellness, and empowerment. Together, we are building a culture of safety and inclusion where no one has to mask. Hello, Judy Reilly.
Hello, Josh Crafford.
I am so excited to have you here today. This is going to be a very special conversation in so many ways. You have inspired and helped my journey, which has helped a lot of people's journeys. I honestly don't think that I would probably be doing this podcast without you. So I am thrilled. Words can't describe how awesome this is going to be.
Thank you for having me. I mean, it's funny.
Yeah.
We go so far back, right? We go long back to both of our start in this particular mission. We were like each other's OGs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I may, I just want to kind of run down through your bio. If there's any part you want to stop me at to go a little bit deeper, please do so. Judy Reilly is the director of the Center for Neurodiversity and Employment Innovation at the University of Connecticut. She's a big deal. The center works nationally to educate and train employers about neurodiversity as a competitive advantage. Love that. Let's get into that a little bit later. And how to implement inclusive practices to obtain that advantage. I'm going to get into that as well. The center also focuses on connecting neurodivergent candidates with companies that support their neurodiversity and drives critical research in the impacts of neurodiversity on organizational outcomes. Yeah. Super interesting. Gonna get into that too. Judy is trained in special education advocacy and law and earned her MBA from the University of Michigan. She is the parent of 4 adult children, 2 of whom are neurodiverse.
Yeah, using that word neurodiverse counter to how we teach it, right? They're individuals, so I should say neurodivergent, but I kind of, I play around with it.
Yeah, as you have taught me, as long as there's no wrong way, as long as your intentions are good, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
absolutely,
there's so many people that will tell me, it's like, well, I don't know what to say, so I don't say anything because I don't want to get it wrong.
I know.
Not showing your support is getting it wrong. So just let us know, hey, I want to support you. Sorry, I don't know if it's neurodivergent. Is it neurodiverse? What, help me understand. That's awesome. I love that.
No, it's interesting because one of the biggest hi everyone, by the way, and I'm sure it's gonna be great, but you and I might go all over the place. But
as we should.
On that note, one of the most frequent pieces of feedback that we get from people who are neurodivergent and are on this mission is, I just want people to be interested in knowing more and learning more. Like if people could educate themselves, it's not that we aren't wanting to help educate. It's that previously we were just ignored or dismissed. So yeah, like doesn't matter if you get it right or wrong, just the showing of interest is really the main part.
Yeah. Yes. I have nothing to add to that. There's going to be so many things I have nothing to add to because it's great. All right. I'm going to just
dive in.
Dive in. All right. So what role as the director of the Center for Neurodiversity and Employment Innovation with the University of Connecticut, what role does neurodiversity play in your life? And how long has it played a role in your life? Because you've been doing this for a long time.
I have, yeah. I know. I've squeezed a lot in my 30 years of life. Oh, wait.
I know,
Okay,
32. It's all right. We'll
right,
let you slide.
exactly. So I love that question. So it's funny because for the majority of my life, it's been learning disabilities, right? It's not neurodiversity. So even that term it was new on the scene of society and it was new to me as well. And prior to that, I, I am the parent of four now allegedly adult children. They're allegedly adults. And two of them have had very unique educational journeys and employment journeys. One is on the autism spectrum and also has ADHD and is very bright. And the other one is profoundly ADHD and dyslexic and has dysgraphia. So lots of special schooling. And then as adults, employment, right? How do they show up in the job search and also in the workplace? So it's got a real personal history for me. So I was an advocate and a lobbyist and a consultant for families and for professionals who are supporting families like neuropsychologists and lawyers and occupational therapists. And really my job was to bring together the solutions and the resources for any one child so that what we could do is make sure that they had what they needed in order to keep progressing and keep developing through their educational journey. But it's complex and it's putting a lot of pieces together. And then you kind of approached me and said, we know what you do. We'd like to be a university that contributes in the employment realm for the same population. And it just felt like it's the same thing where, organizations are messy and complex. We have these rigid systems and we're always looking for efficiencies to lower costs. Well, efficiencies means one size fits all. So in addition to companies not really understanding what neurodiversity is, the processes that they led for hiring and then employment were really leaving people out as well. So it was a great challenge. And here we are 3 or 4 years later. I've stopped keeping track.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
It's funny because what is it? The days are long, but the years are quick or something, or
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
it,
that's true.
and you work more than anybody else that I know. And so I hope you have a couple days off coming up soon.
No, you've always been a very sweet and supportive advocate for me to take a break. And it's true. I think when you find something that you that's really interesting and challenging, and you have other people like you in the journey who you're working with, it's just exciting. There's so much to be done. It's hard to stop.
Fair.
Yeah.
Just as long as you don't burn yourself out, because you're the glue that keeps us together. So
Right. Okay. Okay. Point taken. Well, that's why I'm sitting outside and relaxing during our call.
I love that. Yes. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah. So we'll just say that, the UConn piece of this really you and I met really at the very beginning, I think, of this journey where UConn didn't know what role they wanted to play because this wasn't a topic that they understood. And so it was this beautiful sandbox to play in where I thought, okay, well, what's the problem and how do we solve it? And then, of course, realize these are huge visions to solve. So breaking that down into things that you can actually do and the way that you've played a part in helping get that solution out in front of people, which is predominantly educating employers. And that's really what the center's been about, is changing that workplace environment and the mindset of executives, really, about this is a strategic advantage and here's how you do it.
Yeah, in your bio, you did say it's educate and train employers about neurodiversity as a competitive advantage. Can you dive into that? Because one of the things that I try to focus on in like my keynotes, that any audience that will listen to me, is, look, we know our challenges. You don't have to focus on those. Let's focus on the strengths and what we can bring to you once we feel comfortable and included to do so.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because with my business background, I always think in terms of I want to compel people and organizations to want to do what I also want them to do. And so when you think about companies, they're for profit, resource constrained organizations. So I thought, well, where's the value in it? Not the charity. I also thought it was really important to move away from this charity mindset. It's great that you're doing social good when you say, look, there's a lot of people in our organization who care very much about this as parents or caregivers or whatnot. So there's just going to be a good look to caring about this topic of neurodiversity. But that's not a business case and that's not a value proposition really on the bottom line. So this was more about, you are missing out on an enormous part of the population who has unique talents and strengths if you know how to include them and then how to support them. I know you've heard this a lot of times too from me. I don't like to focus on the superpowers or the amazing strengths in the way that Hollywood really talks about people with autism or different kinds of like dyslexia, ADHD, because it's really just about unique perspective and not always about some savant like person. It's been really important to make sure that employers are motivated to do this for their organization, for revenue driven. And I don't mean it has to make money to them, but it has to make sense in their business case. So that's the competitive advantage. You said, what are those? Well, what we're doing right now is the center is focusing on the creating research projects. We have 2 of them right now and a 3rd in the works, where we're looking at the impacts on the organization when they lean into neurodiversity as a strategy. First, you have to define, what does that mean, lean into that as a strategy? So you'll take a company that's doing this and you'll say, well, how have they leaned in? And so you'll say, well, they've had a hiring program and it contains these components to it. And here's how big it is, right? So that's their initiative and lean in. How did that impact all the people in their company? What do employees who don't even know about that program think once they learn about it? What do employees who participated in it? How do manager skill sets improve or change because they had training, because this became meaningful? There's just so many outcomes from a company that's doing this in a distinct way that we have to measure. We have to have them be translatable to other companies where we say, look, the managers that participated in this, of which there are 180, you can say something like 87% report these positive outcomes on their ability to manage all people. And so that's the kind of organizational research that we want to do. It's really, for me, it's the business case. I'm going to put numbers where our mouth is. We've got anecdote. Now we need actual measures.
Yeah. And it's through UConn. It's not like this is just some, little
or maybe not scientific. I know you always hear me. I'm such a stickler for the word research because it's used so versely. But what we're talking about is actual scientific research by experts who are saying, look, we controlled for variables. We didn't go in with an outcome we wanted and then build the project, right? So that's what's great about it is we're actually discovering things that we've been guessing at for a while. And a lot of scholars have been looking at the individuals. And that's great, getting lots of information about what do they report they need or is helpful, or maybe it's their strengths or their profile. But that's, for me, that's one thing. The other one is, why should I do this? Said company X. Convince me right now why this is good for my organization and use evidence. So that's what we're doing. We're getting the scholars together and they're really interested in this.
So if I'm company X coming to you right now and hopefully listening right now, what is that message? What is that?
So because the studies are in progress, what we have is like initial and preliminary data, and it really centralizes around 3 themes. One is reputational enhancement externally. And so this translates ultimately, you can't prove causality, but it translates into people feeling really good about your brand, i.e. maybe wanting to do business with you. So that matters to the CEO. Like we have a good reputation. This has bumped our brand. The second one is being the employer of choice. So people want to work for us and people stay because they see that our culture is really transformational and it's changing this way. So the more you can spread that kind of effort throughout the company, the more people feel committed and loyal. So that's the second one. And then the third one really is about manager skill sets. When you start to train managers and have them really supported in terms of learning how to do better, they end up realizing they're better people managers overall. So as defined by communication skills, as defined by structure and organization, the way they run a team, clarity. So those are all things that executives care about. And so that's where we are right now. We have the data on that is, survey data. We haven't really done it in the controlled way that the scientists, right? The scholars are setting up right now. I think that project is in its, I would say we're going to have data on that probably first quarter of 2025.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's right around the corner.
I know, right? It'll be here tomorrow.
Yeah, but not every company has neurodivergent people in them, right? I mean, it's obvious that, only certain companies would attract, or certain businesses, or certain types of, something creative or something in the arts. Those are the only places where neurodivergent people work, right?
I love it. People knowing us are like, oh, look at him softballing that one and teeing it right up. I know. I think it's really humbling when I talk to companies and they haven't even thought about this. And you share with them what you were just sort of being facetious about. You share with them that they already have neurodivergent people in their organization. Now, these are people who are able to get and keep their job there. So maybe the degree to which they're being excluded is a little bit less than someone who can't even get and keep a job because of their different behaviors and ways that they think or present themselves. But are those people able to contribute as much as they could? Are they really thriving? Your workforce is your number one asset. And so burnout, turnover, maybe absenteeism, or just I would say poor performance. That sounds like it's on the individual, but 15 to 20% of the population of the world can meet diagnostic criteria for neurodivergence. And so we haven't talked really about what that means. There's lots of labels, and you and I have talked about this a lot of times. And labels help people orient. So I'll go ahead and list a few like I have. We have Tourette's and we have OCD. We have autism is a big one. Autism is an incredibly complex and diverse community itself. Dyslexia, dysgraphia, buy one, get two free. So you have all sorts of unique profiles. And that's less important as we educate people than how is the different way that they go about their life and interact with the workplace or society causing miscommunication, misjudgment, fear, anxiety, anything that's not working well. What is it about the way they're thinking differently? And that's really more important than the label. You've got people in your company right now who will vastly improve their commitment and their performance when they see from the top down that this becomes something the company understands because they're educating themselves and then values. You really just unleash and amplify it.
Why is it important to do it from the top down than just within the bubble of a diversity network?
Well, first of all, I have to say, you and I were just talking about this before we went on set. UConn is fortunate enough right now to have partnered with Wells Fargo's Neurodiversity program, which is, they've hired about 320 people through this incredibly accessible process. But more than that, once people are hired, it's really about the environment and the education there. So, wait, ask your question again. Why is it important to what?
Have top down versus just within a diversity network.
Yeah. So there's some obvious intuitive reasons why it's important top down. Anything bosses say, that's what we're going to do and prioritize. But there's a mechanism with top down that actually allows companies to activate on this. And that is when you get a business lead of a particular part of an enterprise to say, this is what we're going to do, then you get the leadership team below that maybe champion to activate their current hiring needs and say, okay, we're all in on this. And you immediately have this groundswell of people for whom this is important show up. Hiring managers, coaches, buddies, people just want to spread the news. So it's almost like that top-down communication activates the network of people you need to do something like this. That's kind of what we're finding is getting that executive champion really matters.
Yeah. Okay. So you and Stephen have been doing road shows and everything. Go ahead and give them a shout out. Talk about what you guys are doing.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we are like road show buddies. Josh just referred to Stephen, and Stephen DeStefani is the program executive for the Wells Fargo Neurodiversity program, which for UConn really kind of became this company where they were doing it differently than other companies were doing it, both in terms of scale and in terms of comprehensiveness. It was like, let's get the components of everything from maybe how do we source talent? How do we talk about neurodiversity? Then how do we interview? Then how do we support and onboard and then manage? Like, let's look at all of that and maybe do it with a small number at first, but we're going to grow it based on doing a lot of things right. So they started in technology and then they've moved this in across 8 lines of business, and it's just really become firm wide. And so what I, as an academic and an educational advocate, thought is, how do I take what they're doing and teach hundreds of other companies to do it? Because it's transformational, and that's hard stuff to teach companies. We get companies calling up and contacting us and emailing us every week saying, hey, we really want to start doing this, but we don't know where to start. And I was finding that other companies doing this, specifically Wells Fargo, but Microsoft, Travelers, and EY, they get the same phone calls. And I thought, nobody has an answer for teaching the companies. You can't understand how to do this by picking someone's brain. You're not going to learn how to do it on a panel. Like, you're going to learn the importance. You're going to get your curiosity piqued. But how do I actually do this? So Oh my gosh, we have this roadshow going where through Wells Fargo's funding of the center, we are also fully funding for companies a workshop model, which is a whole day. And it is taking 10 to 15 companies who send maybe 3, 4, or 5 people to learn the components, make the blueprint for their company, and then they have the ability to go back and activate that. So over the next 12 months, they can actually implement what they learn in this workshop.
Is it as simple as a one-day workshop leads to the next 12
Yeah,
months of implementation and
yeah,
then
yeah,
you're rocking and rolling?
yeah. I think it's just that easy. We're recording this after 5:30, so I'm not as sharp as I am usually. But yeah, it's funny. It's not that easy, but it's a matter of breaking it down. I mean, I'm a special ed thinker. Like I've always, when I work with students, it's always in terms of very structured and sequential learning. So what I wanted to do was say, look, we're going to cover the model here on this full day workshop. And you've got the corporate lived experience because Wells Fargo delivers this with us, right? You can ask the company that actually has done this.
Mm-hmm.
You can ask the academic, like, okay, but how do we do it? And from there, what we have are the milestones that the participants would want to reach once they activate this. But they
Mm-hmm.
know what step one is, and they know what would come after that, and they know what they should be doing. So, how to support the company afterward really has to do with the degree to which we can scale the follow-up part, because we aren't a consulting company, and that's the whole thing. What we
Mm-hmm.
are is an academic institution. So, we have a lot of ideas about that follow-up. But right now, we feel like we need the feedback from the people who go back and try it to say, how much more support did you need? You know, so
Yeah.
we're available and we're gonna have that follow-up.
I love the fact that you said we're not a consulting company, you're an academic.
Yeah, it's really surprising all the companies that are coming. So their grant for the center is what is enabling us at UConn not to charge for delivering the education. I mean, this is the altruism going on with Wells Fargo is stunning and it's not what one is used to really in the environment. There had been kind of a lot of sharing of information in the early going between companies that were doing this, but it was hard to activate on because it was just sharing of concepts and principles and ideas. It was brain picking. But then when it comes down to, can you actually help us? You had these hundreds of thousands of dollars price tags with the consulting. You know, we've got
Mm-hmm.
companies doing this because it's the for profit for them to teach companies. And I have nothing against them, but I'm in this for the mission. And if we make cost a barrier to learning how to do it, we are
Right.
going to be far short of the goal of impacting employment outcomes. I mean, we've got, me with my numbers. The data isn't exact, but it doesn't matter because you could cut it in half and it's still really worrisome. But 30 to 40% of students who are autistic, so that's the data set, with college degrees are under and unemployed, right? Well, unemployed is the 30%. I bump it to the 40 in so much as we never know how many other learning disabilities are also struggling with this. We don't have
Right.
the number on it, right? And
Right.
because of the co-occurrence, you can't really laser in. But let's just say people with autism who graduate from college have a 30% unemployment rate compared to maybe right now, I think it was 4% or 12%, depends on like what year you're looking at with college degrees.
Mm-hmm.
And then of the 70% that got employed, 25% of them are not working in jobs that require a college degree. So it's
Mm-hmm.
part-time or it's something well below what they're trained and able to do. So the problem's big. And if we have consulting as the thing you have to afford in order to do this work, we're just not going to make enough of a dent.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. After I graduated with a Bachelor of Science in International Business, I started on the phones and I hustled and I would show up early and I would stay late and I would take every assignment that everybody else did not want to do. And, I think we also, and I say we as neurodivergent, because if this is your first time listening, I have severe dyslexia. I read at like a fifth grade level. So many long emails Judy has sent me, they've come right back.
I always say, oh, I forgot.
It's like, okay, I need bullets.
Mhm.
ADHD, combined type, so both inattentive and hyperactive, yay. Dyscalculia, so I flunked freshman algebra, and I did try. And all of that wraps high anxiety into it because, as you said, you don't get as much out of your employees if they have to mask. So one of my missions is no more masking. Whatever someone is uncomfortable about and feels they need to mask about, doesn't just have to be neurodivergence, but if we can create safe and inclusive environments, all of those things that you had mentioned, sick days, retention, productivity, because it takes so much mental and physical effort to mask, that effort and energy could be much more productive, as well as the strengths that we have. People would come to me and say, hey, so-and-so told me to come to you because I'm stuck on something, and I heard you can help get people unstuck.
Yes, you can. You're very good at it.
Well, thank you. But then they would start to say, how did you do that? And I hadn't disclosed at this point. So I would say, I'm just creative. I don't know. And it was really uncomfortable to be put in that position of trying to answer that question, because this is one of the biggest skeletons in my closet. So I didn't want to be known as that person anymore. I didn't want to help people at the cost that they might find out that I'm neurodivergent. And luckily, the company that I work for has a very inclusive environment. Back in 2019, I did share. And when I shared, I was scared and I couldn't breathe as I was sharing, and snot running down and tears. And,
it was the ugly cry.
It was the ugly cry. I knew I wouldn't get fired. But I didn't know if I'd ever get promoted past that. But just the outpouring, because this was broadcast to the whole company, but the amount of thank yous and the amount of people hitting me up, direct messaging me later saying, me too, I thought I was alone. Thank you for doing that. And the fact that I was able to reply back to them, meaning I still had a job, meant that it was safe.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot. So if someone can go to a free seminar and just have a starting place and know that there's a systematic plan, that whatever journey you want to be on for your company, it can be accomplished.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And I'm such a process person, and I'm an operations person when I was in business school, that I like to think about how things work. So, when we're educating about the topic of neurodiversity and we're helping individuals and companies understand what it is, how it shows up in other colleagues and coworkers or maybe employees, and then what you can do differently. I think of that as teaching the person, teaching the individual. And those are our courses, and like the one you were saying, that has been a meaningful experience for a lot of individuals to go through. Separately, this workshop that's free to companies, and we have our inaugural full day workshop is on October 10th, and we have Boeing and Amazon and Bloomberg and the Federal Reserve and a list of companies coming, and the people they're sending, which is about 3 to 5 per company, is just really showing how hungry everybody is to learn.
Wait a second. Did you say the Federal Reserve? Aren't they like government and stuff? And
right. I know. Well, we can get into that in a minute, but what I wanted to make the point was, you've got this concept of teaching individuals and employees, but these workshops are about teaching process and practice. It's almost like organizational change, and not really in the way that you're like, oh, we're never doing that, but like bite-sized organizational change that you can apply to your whole organization for all types of people. It's like it's extensible. Stephen DeStefani always says extensible. I've decided I'm going to, I remember in the beginning being
embrace
like,
it.
I don't know that I'd say that. And now I'm like, yeah, that's about right.
Yep.
But yeah, the Federal Reserve is coming. It's funny, at the federal government separately, a lot of lean into this because it's our largest employer. They have a different context for employment. So when you're teaching them practice change, it's like, that's its own sport. It's a category of movement. The agencies, the millions of agencies. And so, yeah, the Federal Reserve is coming.
I only call them out because I work with them, and I'm doing a talk for them coming up, and they've embraced this movement wholeheartedly. And I was just touched. It's like, okay, it's not the group that I thought necessarily would, and that's my own bias. That's shame on me for that.
No.
But it's I wanted to call it out importantly because you got Wells Fargo and you've got the Federal Reserve, and it's like, if they're doing it, then
Exactly. I know. It's really quite funny when the Federal Reserve and Wells Fargo and banks and PNC Bank and all these people look like the like liberal go-getters. And you've got like, okay, but law firms and engineering firms, they're like very, very rigid. Like, I didn't think banks were not rigid, but there are degrees of innovation and willingness to transform. And we're finding that some industries are a little bit more reticent. For example, the legal industry, they're I'm giving a talk out in Phoenix at Snell and Wilmer, and we had an event there last year, and they said, you know what? We need to start leading the legal industry in this, whether you're attorneys or paralegals. There's so much that is a good fit there. So we're getting there. And then the engineering firms, of course, it's a little trickier, but we've had a couple engineering firms start to say, you know what,
that's
this
great.
makes sense.
What are some of the messages that you always try to get across? It's like, this is a win if someone walks away from listening to this, either knowing X or looking differently at this or thinking what are,
yeah.
take that and run.
You're gonna laugh because you've been hearing me say this forever. My biggest goal is to get people to pause before they make assumptions. They see a behavior, and let's just take this to the workplace. You see a behavior and you say, I don't know why they don't care. It's like they don't even want a job, right? They must not care enough, or some sort of poor performance assumption. I've asked them 3 times. I don't know what else I can do. And yet, what my goal is, if you learn about the way the brain works for somebody neurodivergent, especially when it comes to communication, verbal communication, written communication, whatever that is, communication is hard. We forget. It is hard to have somebody understand you. And so when you take people who actually communicate and comprehend differently, there's nothing wrong with their intelligence, as you know, talked about. This is not about intelligence, but this communication is different. Then they may not be able to activate on the things that somebody's expecting them, but they're terrified to share that because they believe and they've been told that they're dumb. So I want people to pause and say, oh, when you're feeling frustrated with like maybe an employee or a colleague, a teammate, and say, wait a minute, could what I'm seeing actually just be about neurodivergence? And what this poor performance is indicating is we just need a better way to communicate what's expected or to support them in executing. It's always like, we got to find the light bulb moment. And then once you find it, you're good. But if you go with that initial gut assumption, and that's usually an uneducated bias, then you're really just snuffing out the potential for that person to learn and grow and contribute what are talents and things like that. So it's a pause. That's one of my messages. Pause for the possibility that neurodivergence is going on right now, because what you see is not what you think it is. It's not rudeness. It's not laziness. Like you just said, you work so hard on the phones, right? You stay late and take all the jobs. People who learn differently are the hardest working people I've ever met. They're hardest working at relationships and they don't know why they fail. I'm the hardest working at school and like reading and everything. And I want the world to understand that when you say they must not care about this job, it's like, no, it's the opposite. They're trying so hard. So that's a big one for me.
One of the things that you had said is they're so scared or they're so nervous because they've been told that they're dumb. So employers see the person, the adult in front of them, but they don't realize you were once a kid that was put into a public school system that was not built for you. And these are some of the aha moments that I love your thoughts and opinions or your experience with your own kids or however you do that. But when I talk to another neurodivergent person, we generally have a very pivotal life changing moment before the age of 10, before like 5th grade, where we've had negative or positive, usually negative, and then there's a guide, someone that helps us, and it's usually a teacher or a tutor or a coach. Like I couldn't read or write in the 2nd grade. I was held back. I had to start over. And the person from the State Department of Education told my parents I might not graduate high school and don't count on college. And I heard that. And it wasn't until much later that I had a teacher that helped me reframe myself to look at my strengths and know that there's more than just school. And so many, I hope neurodivergent people listening to this will be like, yes, that's me. And then neurotypical people who are listening to this to help understand and be educated are like, wow, I didn't understand that's what your entire school was like, which helped
Yeah.
shape that mindset where you think you're dumb for a long time.
Yeah. When we think about, like you said, you're the adult in front of the employer, and oftentimes you might be in your mid-20s, and people my age are like, you're not really an adult. But yes, you're out of childhood, you're out of education. But what I always come back to is the concept of self-efficacy, which it's not a very sexy term, but its definition is so important. It is the sense that what you are given in front of you, the challenge, the expectation, you can do it. Like, I'll figure it out. I'll be able to meet this mark, or whatever the phrase is. And when you're a learning disabled child and then a young adult and then in an employment situation, what you're doing is you're being given an expectation, but no tools that fit with how you need in order to meet it. So you can't meet it. What happens over time is I can't do anything, and people get frustrated with me, and I mess up, and it must be something with me. There's something wrong with me. I'm not good. So it's that I am dumb, right? You said. And so when you talked about a pivotal moment where there's a coach or a teacher or somebody who helps you see yourself as not all negative that way, you've got this value, and oh, look at this, you actually have some special talents. That's what we look at with the managers. The way that the people, especially like with the Wells Fargo program, because I've met so many individuals who are hired through their program. I've heard so many, like, they move you to tears with the stories. But it's, my manager didn't get mad. They asked, how can they help? And because they had enough education about neurodivergence, they asked some pretty helpful questions instead of just, how can I help? Because a lot of times people will ask you, how do you learn? What do you need? And you're like, I don't really know in this context. I just know I don't feel like I'm doing well. So that pivotal person in your employment to say, no, you're doing great. And please, I'm not going to lose my patience. This might get hard. I might run out of time, but we'll find you what you need. That's, I think, the pivotal moment in employment that you need, where you don't have to mask anymore.
Yeah. Is it that easy? I know the answer is yes, but I want you to tell people, because I have talked to so many different companies or people or HR or DE&I leaders, and they think that it's opening a can of worms, or it's opening Pandora's box, that if we say that we want to do anything around neurodiversity, that it's going to be such a big daunting lift that it's not worth it. So they leave it alone and they ignore it. They turn the other way. What you just said is really important to help people understand. No. It's not as hard as you think, because if someone is smart enough to get hired and had to go through all that other crap as a youth and a teen and a young adult, you've got someone that knows how to survive and thrive.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
That's true. It's so interesting you say that. So I always come down to, when employers are having that reaction you just talked about, like, oh, this is so daunting. You got to tell them the why. Here's why this is worth it. And that's where you get into the business case. And it can be everything from the right thing for people is also the right thing for business. Like, it can be both things. It can be a sort of soft, like, people centric, because people feel better when you do this. And it doesn't stop at that. When people feel better, they are more committed. Like, then you get to the hardcore, like, and they do better, right? So, okay, that's part of the why. Here's why to do it. And then it's okay, we're bought in. Wait, how? And that's where you get into here's the how. There's a couple different things that we tell companies. And, I know that you've been so involved in so much of this along my journey. So some of this is redundant for you, but I've been talking about it being 3 options, and they're not sequential. The roadmap for companies is always different, but take these 3 ingredients and think about how these can be the way a company starts. Number 1, they could start with just the education. We've got 5 or 6 courses. You can get them on demand. You can have supplemental sessions if you want for certain groups within your company. You can put it on your internal LMS. But these are deep dives into, what is neurodiversity? How does it show up in the workplace? How do I know when it's a factor? And what do I do differently? Okay, great. Let's just get people educated on that. So that's one. A second one is this workshop piece that we've talked about, which is much more about the business practices. What all do we have to change, and for how many people? And we're not even hiring right now, and this is all very scary. Like, we're going to take this at baby steps, and you're going to leave feeling like, okay, that's work, but hey, you gave me the instructions. And then the third one is an experiential learning opportunity. And that's our history with the neurodiversity career experience, really, where you take a group of neurodivergent college students who very much need experiential learning with a company, but they're not at a place where maybe they're able to do a traditional internship, or internships aren't accessible to them for all sorts of hiring reasons. But they want to learn about, how does my interest in astronomy map to working at a bank, right? And companies are like, well, how do we meet? What is this neurodiversity thing? Like, what are neurodivergent people like, right? So you get the two groups together and it's usually a love affair. So you get the education in there, but that's what can sort of, I think, jumpstart things.
Yeah. Such a love affair. And so I've heard feedback from the program that we've run recently, as far as, you have mentors and mentees all assigned together, and the mentee, the student, said, you know what, we've been inside all day. Can we go for a walk? And it's a chief officer at a Fortune 200 company is like, yeah, sure, great. And they had the most wonderful,
yeah,
and they had a blast. And it's like, it's not anything scary, right?
No.
You're not going to break anybody. And as long as everything is done out of a good intention, people will tell you if you should word something differently, or, it's.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you're right. Like that, like you said, scary. Something that we think about, and I just want to make this like understandable for anybody who's listening. So this is called the Neurodiversity Career Experience Program, and it was developed in partnership with Josh Crafford. This is a structured 2-day experience. And before the experience, the whole reason to bring a company into this is to say, why don't you meet a bunch of neurodivergent students in a structured sort of program way, and you build these relationships. And, oh, but I heard people don't make eye contact. I heard people do stimming behaviors, or I heard people just like get up and leave the room, or what if they're not paying attention, ADHD and all sorts of things. And you're like, that may happen, but it's not going to be a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Here's why that's happening. So you teach them why not to misinterpret it. I know they haven't been looking at you once, and they've actually been on their phone the entire time, and you'd say, they're not even paying attention. And then you say to them, could you repeat back everything I just said? And they can, because looking at their phone actually allowed them to pay attention. People don't know that. So that's what I loved about that. And I loved how the students were like, I can't believe I'm actually excited about the idea of working for a bank. Like, I would have never thought about that. So it's a recruiting tool too.
Oh, 100%. For people that don't know what stemming is, what is that?
Yeah, stimming is a physical behavior that you'll see someone doing, and it can be everything from twirling something to tapping to rocking. And what it is it's a way to, oftentimes it's one of two things. It can be a way to fuel your attention. Like, people are like, no, I can't think while I'm sitting down, right? Or there might be a way to, or it might be a way to calm anxiety. So some people are going to stim when they're in uncomfortable environments. Sometimes it's just a movement of your foot. It's just like a way you might move your body. So other people see it and they're like, what the heck is this person doing?
Or it's, you got to like shake your hands out sometimes.
Yep. Yep. That's a good example. That's a really good example. Some people take their shoes on and off and on, right? Or they twirl something, or they shake something. When you see it, sometimes you can think about it as, okay, well, I'm definitely feel like this person might be anxious, which I don't want them to feel anxious, but I also want to be mindful that whatever they're doing might be working for them. So how about you say, like, is this helping? And if someone says it is, then it's great, right? Don't have to stop it. But if they say, are you feeling uncomfortable? Do you want to go for a walk? Do you want to go outside? That might be a good signal too, but that's all the education. Yeah. That's stimming.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. How about my high horse about ADHD and how everybody doesn't have it?
Let's dive in.
Well, I think you've heard this one too. I am so tired of people being like, everybody has ADHD. I think ADHD is one of the most difficult diagnoses and profiles to live with. It's just, what are you laughing about?
My wife will agree with you. Yeah,
because when you know somebody with real ADHD and how their life is disrupted, you go, oh yeah, no, I mean, if I had to pay attention, I could. I mean, so we talk about the brain on scans in somebody who has ADHD lights up differently than the brain of somebody without it. Now, the brain of somebody without ADHD is definitely going to have procrastination and disorganization. And yes, they're going to want to do things they're more interested in than not. It's the fact that they can override it. It has to do with the chemicals in your brain. You can summon the chemicals in your brain when you need to, and someone with ADHD cannot. So I just always really want people to have more compassion for what ADHD really is like, and people feeling frustrated that they can't accomplish their goal or their mission. They need so much more structure than somebody without ADHD. So give them the structure, they can do it.
What does that look like?
Yeah, structure. We got to override the parts of your brain that have to make too many decisions that distract you from what you're doing. So routines, like, you know, people think, oh, everybody does routines, but then you can just alter your routine when you want to. No, 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 no. This is about, you have a routine, and even when you want to alter it, you probably shouldn't. It's like your prosthetic device, right? And that's hard. People who wanted to stay out later because they're having fun, but they know that if they don't stick to their routine, that it makes some of the things they need to do harder. So routine is one of them. We've talked about body doubling. So
Mm-hmm.
accountability is something that works really well for people who get distracted and have attention deficit, where simply having somebody know that you're supposed to be working and focused physically near you, and they never have to say word one. It's like telling somebody that you're not going to eat sweets for a month, and then you spend all your time with them. And the fact that they know you're not supposed to do it is what helps you.
Yeah.
So doing work near people is really helpful.
Yeah. My son and I, so when he does his homework at the table, I'll
Oh,
edit this
yeah.
podcast. So I'm sitting there
Yeah.
and we just sit
Body
at the
doubling.
same table. And then every now and then we'll look up, we'll give each other a thumbs up, or he'll throw a piece of paper at me, and then I'll go back to work. And it's
I have
great.
to tell you something. I have just recently discovered, and it was a part of our curated resources for the network of neurodivergent candidates that we support, and it's called Flown. I haven't actually looked into if it's an app or what it is, but it's virtual focus sessions, meaning virtual work sessions, other people that need to be working at the same time. And I think about this for students who, it's like, I don't need a tutor. I just need a place to be where I'm supposed to be doing my work. And if I have a question, I could ask it, right? It's like a guided study hall. And they
Yeah.
have that for employees too. Like if you want to be in a Flown session. Anyway, so you're right. Like that presence of other people. And with remote work, oh, tough for
Yeah.
some people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But with remote work, I I have so much more freedom to spin in my chair or click my pen or
Get up and
play
walk
with my
around.
fidget toys. Oh yeah, if I'm not on camera, I know the range of my headset to my computer.
Yeah. Yeah. Being able to move around. No, it's totally true. And that's why, again, with education, oh, you just want to work remote because you want to slack off, right? Yeah, no, not necessarily.
Still got to
Or
get the work done.
the opposite can be true too, where people are like, I can go into the office, but there aren't enough people there to
Mhm.
provide that structure, right? So we're kind of in this in-between land of whether when your brain works differently, it works better remote or in person for different reasons at different times, even for the
Yeah.
same person. There's so much you can do, right? With timers and executive function coaching. And it's just a matter of somebody not saying, if you really wanted to do it, you could. I've seen what you do when you want to do something. So why can't you do this other thing?
Yes. I'm glad that you brought that up because there is that misperception. And if you don't have that lived experience, then you don't really understand it. So I appreciate you mentioning it and breaking it down and providing that example because some other people either one don't know how to explain it or it's too painful to explain or they don't feel comfortable explaining. So I love that you are giving that a voice. So thank you for that.
Of course. Of course. It is hard when we're trying to teach managers and companies. And if you don't have the lived experience, you're hearing it, but you haven't emotionally experienced it. So it is tough to teach. But you start to recognize it once you know what to look for. And that's when the empathy can come. If you don't know what to look for, you're going to be dismissing all this stuff as either odd or atypical, but you're not going to look at it. You're just going to say, that doesn't work for me, versus, oh, that's so interesting. That's like what I learned about.
Well, the other important environment for that is in interviews, right? Often if someone puts a ton of resumes into a system just to look for grammatical errors and weed out the ones that have any grammatical mistakes, my dyslexic butt is going to be out. But then in an interview, I have to sit still, I have to focus, I have to make eye contact, I can't fidget, I have to think about the answer, I have to process the answer. And that all takes so much energy that I can't give the best answer that I want, or I come across awkward. So that also having that understanding in an interview and knowing that this person is your best employee for these skills that you're hiring for, and they'll blow anybody else out of the water because we do work hard, we do think differently, we approach things from multiple perspectives that will give you better end results. But yeah, we're a little fidgety and awkward.
Yeah, we're that exactly. Deal with it. No, I'm kidding. Very right. And the interview is a really important thing to look at. And then you start to look at the interview and you think, wait a minute, sorry. So we're going to ask everybody to tell us why we should hire them. That might be really great for the person who can be a great orator and can sell themselves that way. And P.S., that may be scary because they can sell me on something that they're actually not good at, right? But why are we asking everyone to do it the same way? So maybe we're looking at our hiring process and saying we should be a little bit more varied in how we assess talent so that, like you said, first of all, like, why is it the same process for everybody? And why is it so social normed based? Is that really telling us who can do the job? Yeah, like the skills for the job is,
and it doesn't give you any diversity of thought because you're only hiring those people that can answer that in the box or are incredible storytellers that could be lying about their abilities.
I know, right? I'm being cynical about that, but you're right. I think you don't want to hire the person who interviews well unless they also do the job well.
Right. Well, if the job is a communications job or if the job is a sales job, but if it's a technical job, then you should evaluate them on their technical skills, unless they are going to have to get up in front of an audience and then present on their technical skills. But that's really the case.
Even then, we've got lots of workarounds for that. But I'm with you. It's definitely, the interview is a tough one. And I think that Stephen, because he's ex-military, always says that's where bias is weaponized. I'm like, wow, right? That's very visceral. I can sort of get that, but that's kind of true. Like the interview is the way we hold people to standards that have nothing to necessarily do with the job, unless, like you said, they're a salesperson.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know.
Is there a message or anything else that you wanted to share that you hadn't had an opportunity to share yet?
Yeah, I think what I'd love to do is, just in case anybody is listening and wants to understand, how does UConn Center help? And I just want to say, we have these 3 activities we do. A variety of ways that we get employers educated and on board with this. We've talked about it. A variety of ways that we are using academic research to help us build the business case. And also understand really what are the organizational impacts. Maybe they'll build the business case, maybe they won't. I don't know what we're going to learn. But the third one that we haven't spent much time on is we have been really focused on helping people who are neurodivergent better equip themselves for how their neurodiversity is going to impact their job search, their career development, and their employment. And so with that, it's not always about how do I master the job search as it is currently constructed, but how do I begin to use the job search as a way to showcase my neurodiversity? So not how do I hide it and fit into this process that exists, but how do I approach it and proactively educate while I'm on my job search and tell them why, oh, you don't even know this about me, but this is really cool and great. And here's why I'd be really good at the job. Now, that sounds like a neurotypical way of going about it, but you have to empower people by helping them understand what's great about them. Also, realistically, where they might struggle. And so we have a candidate network of close to 1,000 students that we provide programming. We introduce them to companies so that they're not having to go to a career fair in order to network, and lots of just kind of like lived experience from others who've been there, done that. It's just been really exciting and exhausting, as you know.
Yes.
Yeah. In a good way. Exhausting because
there's
so many people interested in this, and not a lot of organizations doing it in a, I think, actionable, kind of impactful way.
Well, hopefully you can help them with that.
That's what
we'll
we're
connect
trying.
you with them.
That's what we're trying. Yeah.
All right. I'm starting a closing tradition.
Are you?
Use the word tradition.
Okay.
Okay. So I asked the previous guest to give me 2 words to present to you, not knowing who you are going to be or what you are, that you need to mash those 2 words together to make sense and talk back about this topic. They wanted to throw you for a loop because you know this individual and they're a lot of fun.
Oh, no. Okay.
Popcorn and pink. And she even sent me a picture of like, look, this is me at a Pink concert. And then she did some type of popcorn festival. So she's like, yeah, popcorn
So
and pink.
popcorn and pink as it relates to this topic.
Sure.
Is that the challenge?
Yeah.
No, you look like maybe I got it wrong.
No, it is. It is. I'm
Okay.
just thinking, what would I do?
Well, I mean, it's funny because popcorn seems easy to me, and so much as I immediately picture the kernel popping, for me, that's the experience of either a manager or an employee or a neurodivergent individual, kind of like, aha, like this makes sense. Or for somebody like finally connecting with that pivot person in the employment, like it's growth, like explodes, right? But pink, first of all, I'm going with Pink the artist instead of Pink, which she did too, not Pink the color.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I know she meant, but in case people were thinking of the color, I love Pink's lyrics. They're always about like my uniqueness, and you're not going to take that away from me, and it's strength against adversity. So I don't know that I mashed them together. Pink eating popcorn could be like, maybe, I don't know.
May I yes and?
Yes, you may,
that's,
yes and.
yes, no judgment, yes and start with rough and ugly. Those are the ground rules. So I'm going to mash yours together to say Pink's lyrics create those popcorn aha moments.
Oh, I forgot I was supposed to make a whole sentence.
No,
that's
okay.
awesome.
I didn't say put it. I just said mash it together somehow. But and I love Pink's lyrics as well. Yeah. Because I'm like, she's talking to me.
I know. Yeah. I just love that. I love her. So I think those are great. Yeah. You didn't know what you're going to do with popcorn, and that one was the easy one for me. Okay. Yeah. So now I have to think of 2 words.
Don't do it on the air though. Because I don't want someone, depending on when this plays and who goes next. And text it to me. I will. Yes. That way I'll give you time to either scramble of, here's 2 things recently, or
I know, it's so funny. Popcorn and Pink. That I've got to find out who that was.
Yes, and you do know them, but I will tell you. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure and a lot of fun as always. We can link UConn Center for Neurodiversity into the show notes so that people can find you. Thank you so much, Judy Reilly.
So happy to talk to you. Thanks for doing this work, and thanks for doing this podcast.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. All right.
I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for listening. You are honestly the reason that this podcast exists. If you'd like more information on today's guest, please see the show notes. Also, add a comment to let us know your thoughts. And please subscribe.